South Sudan, country in turmoil. Chapter 1. Origins.
Ever since the British-mandated partition of the Sudanese peoples, there has been conflict over the nature of their independence. Having been ruled by Britain from 1899 to 1956, the Sudanese achieved their long-awaited independence in the summer of 1956. This independence, though widely celebrated, largely ignored the needs of Sudan's different tribes and ethnicities and was immediately followed by civil war within the fledgling nation. Having been ruled by Britain as two separate entities, North and South Sudan, there was an acknowledged separation of the country during colonial rule which was ignored when the Sudanese border was finalized in 1956. Widespread dissatisfaction followed the original partition of the Sudanese as well as the government established by the British. This dissatisfaction culminated in a coup by Ibrahim Aboud and his coalition, the People's Democratic Party, in 1958, with intentions of resolving the inadequacies of the former government. Despite the efforts of this new government, political dissent was still widespread, with rebel groups throughout the nation continuing to fight for southern independence and more inclusive government. After several years of fighting, an interim government was created in 1964 with the intention of quelling the violence which continued to ravage the country. Though much of the fighting was subdued, dissatisfaction was still rampant, and on May 25, 1969, a second military coup occurred. This coup, led by Colonel Ghaffar Namiri, led to the outlying of political parties within the nation and only served to further polarize an already divided country. Infighting among the ruling class led to another coup in 1971, with Marxist forces briefly ruling the nation until Namiri was reinstated by anti-communist factions several weeks later. Later that year, Army Lieutenant Joseph Lagu was successful in gathering the guerrilla factions of South Sudan under the South Sudan Liberation Movement. This force was South Sudan's first cohesive political and military organization and, with the aid of Christian mediaries, was successful in ratifying the Addis Ababa Agreement of March 1972, ending the nearly 20-year conflict and granting to the South Sudanese an official administrative region separate from the North. This peace, however, was transient, and in 1975 the war for independence once again raged as new liberation movements sought to gain a higher degree of independence for the South Sudanese. Despite these movements, there was still an official peace between the two sides.
In 1983, fighting between northern and southern Sudan breaks out, led by John Garang, the leader of the Sudan People's Liberation Movement. In 1988, the Democratic Unionist Party of Sudan drafted a ceasefire, but it was not implemented, and a year later, military seized power in Sudan. In 2002, the Sudan People's Liberation Army signed a 6-month renewable ceasefire with the government of Sudan in the central Nuba Mountains, which was a crucial rebel location. Talks between the rebels and the government of Sudan, held in Kenya, led to an agreement about ending the civil war. The Machakos Protocol allowed the south part of Sudan to seek self-determination after 6 years. In January 2005, the civil war was ended by the North-South Comprehensive Peace Agreement, which also called for a permanent ceasefire, gave the South a large degree of autonomy, established a government where power was shared with the rebels, and allowed for a referendum regarding South Sudan's independence in 6 years. In July of 2005, John Garang, the former southern Sudanese rebel leader, is sworn in as vice president, and a new constitution is signed which grants southern Sudan a large degree of autonomy. In August 2005, John Garang is killed in a plane crash and replaced by Salva Kiir Mayardit, which sparks fighting in the capital. In September, a government of shared power is established in Khartoum, and in October, an autonomous government dominated by rebels is formed in the south. In 2006, fighting between southern rebels and northern Sudanese forces breaks out around the southern town of Malakal. In October of 2007, the Sudan People's Liberation Movement backs out of power-sharing government in Khartoum, accusing the North of breaking the rules of the agreement, but they would return in December. Clashes began to break out over the disputed region of Abyei on the north-south border in 2008. Serious fighting over Abyei breaks out, and Salva Kiir, leader of the South Sudanese, and President Omar Bashir of Sudan call for international arbitration to settle the dispute. In July of 2009, the arbitration court shrunk the disputed region and placed the majority of the Heglig oil field in the north. In 2009, terms are met regarding the independence referendum to be held in 2011. In 2011, South Sudan votes for full independence, and they suspend talks with the North after accusing them of plotting a coup. In June of 2011, after clashes over Abyei, the North and South Sudanese sign a deal to demilitarize the area and allow an Ethiopian peacekeeping force to watch the area.
On January 9th, 2010, the Sudanese people were given the opportunity to decide on whether Sudan should remain one united country or allow the South to be separated. The leading cause for the separation was to the racial and religious differences between the North and South, with the North being primarily Arab and Muslim and the South being more African Christian and animist. The South believed that the Muslim North was unfairly treating and disregarding the needs of the South. Almost 99% of the citizens voted for the secession of South Sudan. In July of 2011, South Sudan achieved its independence with Salva Kiir Mayardit as their president. The South Sudanese people believed that their independence would only bring good fortune and an end to the constant war. Yet, those high expectations have yet to be achieved. Before South Sudan won their independence, the United Country of Sudan based most of their economy off of the oil industry. Of course, most of the oil wells were located in the south of Sudan. So after the independence of South Sudan, tensions rose between the two countries because both Sudan and South Sudan's economies began to shrink. Constant battles between the two countries were persistent through 2012 until the African Union had to step in to put an end to the disagreement and achieve an agreement on the oil dispute. In July of 2013, Salva Kiir dismissed his cabinet and released the Vice President Riek Machar. Salva Kiir claimed that this move would remove all possible corruption and allow for a fresh start of the government. In December, Salva Kiir released a statement claiming that Riek Machar attempted a coup. This caused a civil war between government troops and rebels, led by Riek Machar. Throughout South Sudan, war between the two groups have caused innocent civilians to be displaced and to die. Life for South Sudan citizens has changed drastically. The country has become very poor and people are making less than $1 a day. It has grown increasingly difficult to bring food to the family, and now there is a mass water shortage. Child soldiers have also become a large part of the outlook of not only South Sudan but almost all of Africa. When rebel troops sack a city, they force the children against their will to fight for what the rebels think is right or die.
The political roots of this problem include the division of ethnic tribes by Britain and a lack of Sudanese representation in government, which infuriated native people. Socially, the roots of this problem include tribal and religious divides. This conflict also has roots in disputes over oil. Refugees have become a large burden for the Western world.